Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more HD video and be sure to check us out on our live stream via the link in the bottom of the screen. Thanks and enjoy the show.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Ersatz women's rights lawyer Lisa Bloom has finally been exposed for who she really is. Bloom has built a career posturing as a champion of the oppressed, but the only person who seems to be winning in that equation is Lisa Bloom. Last summer, for example, she represented Kathy Griffin following Griffin's Trump beheading stunt, only to have Griffin turn around and denounce her, Bloom, for excessive fees and, quote, fame whoring. This fall, the great feminist warrior fought to protect, of all people, Harvey Weinstein. Actress Rose McGowan says that Bloom offered her a 7-figure payday if she agreed to call Weinstein a changed man, which she did not agree to. Now, The Hill newspaper has a new report alleging that Lisa Bloom solicited funds to pay off women who would then accuse the president of sexual assault. Trace Gallagher has the full story on that. He joins us tonight. Trace?
Hi, Tucker. Lisa Bloom says reports that women were paid to come forward with accusations of sexual misconduct by President Trump are nothing more than right-wing efforts to discredit victims. And yet, Bloom, the daughter of famed attorney Gloria Allred, fully acknowledges that she tried to get tabloid media outlets and pro-Hillary Clinton political action committees to pay these women. The Hill, which broke the story, says Bloom arranged for a donor to pay off one of the accuser's mortgage and tried to score a 6-figure payout for another. One of the women, who was offered $750,000, declined to come forward. Lisa Bloom says the money, of which she takes 1/3, is meant to keep her clients safe and, in some cases, to help them relocate. Of Lisa Bloom's 4 clients, 2 of them decided to come forward and 2 did not, including one who decided to tell her story to The Hill after learning that Bloom was representing the alleged serial sexual harasser Harvey Weinstein. Bloom and Weinstein's relationship ended when rape allegations went public. The woman who did not come forward says she supported Trump in 2016 and does not resent him because he stopped his advances toward her when she asked him to. Lisa Bloom says the women who did come forward are telling the truth, and the story by The Hill is trying to undermine them now that they are gaining momentum. Tucker.
Trace Gallagher, thank you. Emily Capano is a legal analyst and former federal attorney, and she joins us tonight. So, Emily, at this point, we know that Lisa Bloom, who for years has posed as a champion of women, particularly of victims of sexual assault, took money to flack, in essentially, for Harvey Weinstein, discredit his victims. TMZ reports she recorded one of them in an effort to discredit her. And now we learned that she's profiting from the sexual harassment claims of this next set of women. Why is she still able to do this? How does she get a pass to continue this pretty lucrative career she has, flacking for people like this?
Exactly. What I find so disturbing here, there's an element of hypocrisy fatigue here, frankly. And what is so disappointing about this in particular is that this is an attorney who's purporting to be a champion of these women's rights and values. And attorneys, especially in this realm, are supposed to be advocates. And that's more than just showing up in court. So the fact that she is subjecting these women to another round of abuse and trauma and shaming is incredibly disappointing here. And, it's not illegal for PACs to pay for true stories and to dig up dirt. We've seen it in the past with David Brock and Larry Flint. But again, the fact that it's coming from an attorney is incredibly disappointing. And it takes a lot more in the state of California for an attorney to be admonished or disbarred. Honestly, we're not going to see that for this. But it's just a subsequent betrayal. And again, it's another unraveling and revealing of someone who's a hypocrite.
Why wouldn't the bar take action? I mean, here you have a person who was caught lying, for one. At one point, she said this of Harvey Weinstein: "I was never aware there were allegations of sexual assault." Well, of course she was. And she briefed the board of the Weinstein companies on this. I mean, her job was to protect Harvey Weinstein against these allegations. That's not enough to get a censure from the bar in California?
There's a pretty strict code of conduct in the state of California, but in terms of actual admonishment, she can be recommended for a review. But in past cases, it's just taken more for someone to be disbarred or admonished. And all of us find her behavior reprehensible and, for me, embarrassing as a California state attorney. But again, it just takes a lot more here. And that is what's so disappointing, is I think these gray areas where there's dishonesty, but what was the exact relationship and nature of her signing on the dotted line with these clients, and how, in essence, does this break a specific rule that the California State Bar or the ABA has passed? Unfortunately, it's gray. And so it at this point, the illumination hopefully will decrease her client list, and that may be enough to at least render her that she won't do this behavior in the future.
Well, you'd think she would at least be publicly discredited. It does strike me as a non-attorney as unethical that she was trying to set up media appearances for people making claims of sexual assault or harassment, and then was apparently, by her own admission, trying to take 1/3 of the fees. Is it normal to do this on commission, as she seems to be doing?
Right. You know, I personally have not seen that in the past. And she was clear and upfront with saying, well, we take 1/3. But what I found disturbing is the fact that her justification of such was the insurance fees and the electrical bills of her law firm. It really had a minimal correlation with her representing those women on air. And frankly, there, as you know, media appearances are often not rewarded, because the whole point is there are ethical considerations, right, to support the veracity. You don't want to cross that line or present an appearance of impropriety. So here, it's almost like she was running a racket, but because she was blatant, I don't see her being disbarred or being formally admonished. It's just simply disappointing and reprehensible. And as you said, hopefully now this revelation and illuminating it will make others refuse to work with her in the future.
Yeah, if you're paying the victims of Harvey Weinstein to lie and to vouch for his good character, don't call yourself a feminist. That would be my rule. Emily, thank you. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Joe DeGenova was a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, and he joins us tonight. Joe, I have to just ask you very quickly before we get to the Russia investigation a question about Lisa Bloom. What does it take for a lawyer to be censured by the bar or to be disbarred? If you have multiple examples of lying and unethical behavior, that's not enough?
It's not usually in most bars. Big bars like California and New York tend to protect their lawyers, and their ethical systems tend to slap people on the wrist. My guess would be she would not get any type of ethical restrictions imposed on her as a result of this. I can tell you this, when we do a pro bono case at our firm, we don't take a cut of anything. We represent people for free. We even incur the cost. So whatever she said was pro bono, that's nonsense. I think that misrepresentation to the public is absolutely disgusting, but it's consistent with her behavior.
Yeah, it's free, except I take 1/3.
Yeah.
There's talk about doublespeak. So to this investigation, you obviously have conducted investigations. When you did you ever stack them with prosecutors who were personally hostile to the person being investigated?
No, and let me just say this right now, Tucker. What you have now unfolding inside the FBI and the Department of Justice under Obama is a brazen plot to do two things: to exonerate Hillary Clinton because of an animus toward Donald Trump, and then if she lost, to frame the incoming president for either a criminal act or impeachment. This is one of the most disgusting performances by the senior officials at the FBI and the Department of Justice, and it demands that every one of these agents involved be fired, and that the people who are still in the Justice Department be fired, including Mr. Orr, and that they impanel a federal grand jury to investigate the conduct of McCabe and Strzok and Page and Comey and Orr and everybody in the Obama Justice Department who even touched this, because it's very clear that they conspired to frame the incoming president of the United States. And it's a frightening and disgusting prospect that FBI officials, senior FBI officials, would do this. And those text messages are frightening. They're just frightening.
The Trump administration oversees the Department of Justice now. What would it take to call some of these people to account for their behavior, at least to get to the bottom of it? Mr. Orr, for example, who met with people from Fusion GPS and didn't tell his superiors about it. His wife worked there. He didn't tell them about that either. Why is he still there?
Well, that's a good question. He's been demoted. He lost his associate deputy attorney general slot 4 doors down from Mr. Rosenstein. He's now back in his old job as the head of an organized crime drug task force. I do not understand how he can continue to stay in the department. In all likelihood, he's being investigated by the Inspector General as part of that larger investigation into what the Justice Department did with Comey and others to basically throw the case against Clinton. A bunch of dirty cops got together and decided to throw a case against the Democratic presidential nominee. I don't think Mr. Orr is going to be around the department very long because he can't function ethically in those constraints.
So just finally, just some perspective for those of us who haven't conducted these investigations. We know that then Director Comey had written the speech he subsequently gave in July of 2016, 2 months before, in which he exonerated Hillary Clinton,
right,
before which he'd even interviewed her or a dozen of her top aides. Is that unusual to come to a conclusion like that, she's innocent, before even interviewing her? That seems odd.
It is not only extremely unusual, it's never happened before. James Comey threw the case against Hillary Clinton in conjunction with senior FBI officials and Justice Department officials in the Obama administration at the time. It's never done. Comey sold his soul to the devil. Believe me, you cannot believe the telephone calls we're getting from current FBI people about how they cannot abide by what's going on. And one thing they can't understand is, why is Andrew McCabe still at Christopher Wray's right hand inside the senior offices of the FBI? I mean, McCabe and Strzok and Page are all out of the same cloth. They conspired to exonerate improperly and politically Hillary Clinton, and also, if she lost, to frame the incoming president of the United States with a false crime. This is a constitutional crisis, and Congress better stay on it until they get all the answers, and then there needs to be a grand jury.
Washington, where no one is ever fired. That should be the sign as you drive in. Joe, thank you.
Thank you.
Not everyone agrees that the FBI's probe has been compromised. We'll talk to a top former Hillary Clinton advisor who thinks the FBI is doing a pretty good job. Stay tuned. Week has revealed a number of reasons to be at least skeptical about the FBI probe into Russian collusion during the last election. Peter Strzok, the FBI agent, is a seething Democratic partisan who, when you read his text, sounds like a middle schooler. Andrew Weissman praised Sally Yates for her left-wing virtue signaling. DOJ official Bruce Orr's wife worked for Fusion GPS. Orr himself met with Fusion GPS and did not tell his superiors. It is pretty rational now to suspect the investigation may be ideologically compromised, certainly in the view of the public, and that's not a small thing. Not everyone agrees with this, though. Philippe Reines was an advisor to Hillary Clinton at the State Department during the 16 campaign and long before that, and he joins us now. So, Philippe, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not running for the Supreme Court or anything, but it seems to me that if
you don't have to be these days.
You don't have to be. To ask a simple, dumb question, such as this. If you're investigating somebody, shouldn't you at least complete your interviews of relevant figures in that investigation and of the principal herself before you decide what the answer is? Comey, 2 months before interviewing Secretary Clinton, decided that she was innocent of the charge. How can that be?
Well, I can't sit here and defend Jim Comey because I think I'm sitting here because I can't defend Jim Comey, in the sense that it's hard to say that if people who think that he did her any favors, that's crazy. Secretary Clinton would probably, or had a much better chance of being president had it not been for Jim Comey. So it's not, I don't think it's that.
I agree with you, actually. I think he hurt her by his public statements about her, without question. I said so at the time. But my concern is not even who won the election. It's, is the process on the level or not? So take out Hillary Clinton's name and put in anybody else's name. Is it okay to reach a conclusion before actually interviewing the person?
I don't know that that's what he did, but it was inappropriate for him to even be considering making a public statement. The fact that he found nothing there to proceed on meant he should have just issued a statement saying this has been resolved. Instead, he went out and he made a scathing comment on July 5th that had a great impact. So I agree with you. He did not proceed appropriately and by the book, and I think he might end up suffering for that because there's now an investigation of how he handled it. But someone having drafts of what they may say, I think they were pretty thorough and they went where the evidence found them.
So if you think Comey was is discredited and was irresponsible as head of the FBI, that casts a shadow, I'm sure,
I don't
in your
think
mind.
He's discredited. I think he's self-righteous.
Okay, but wait a second. Comey's also the one who oversaw this Russia investigation. So let me ask you a macro question that seems to have been lost in the shuffle recently. This investigation is about Russian interference in the 2016 election and collusion purportedly between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. None of that has surfaced at all. There's no evidence to this moment that there's any collusion at all between those two bodies. Does that bother you at all?
Well, we don't know what's been found yet. We know that 4 people have pled guilty for breaking the law in one way or another, including Mike Flynn, in regards to his conversations with the Russian government.
That's not true. He was actually charged with and pled to lying to federal agents.
Well,
it happened to be about those
Why do
conversations.
you lie about something?
I don't know.
You
but
lie about
I do
something
know
because you're doing something you
that
shouldn't
the
do.
most intensive investigation of my lifetime conducted by the federal government of a public official has, and everything's been leaked, as you know, like everything. I mean, Strzok's text messages I have right here. There's no evidence that there was actual collusion. And in fact, Democrats I know don't believe there was collusion, that Putin was trying to help Trump. I mean, it's like ludicrous. Does that bother you?
It bothers me that people are prejudging and trying to undermine Bob Mueller. He is going to get to the bottom of this. We'll know soon enough, whether that's next week, next month, 6 months from now. We should let him do his job.
Sure, but by the way, I'm not calling for his resignation.
But the text message you have in front of you, you shouldn't have.
Okay, fine.
Better people trying to undermine a process.
You know who should have them is Congress should have them, because Congress has the oversight role.
That's fine.
And the FBI withheld them for months, and that's a huge problem.
We're in total agreement.
Okay, but if at the end of this you have a bunch of people charged for obstruction or perjury, but none of the charges and none of the evidence points to the core allegation of collusion between the campaign and the Russian government, can we all agree that this has been a total travesty and a disaster?
Absolutely not. I can't agree to that. Because where there is this much smoke, there is more smoke, there is flames, there are wildfires. What these people were doing, even if this is all we know.
I get it. So if someone looks guilty, he is.
No.
If someone's standing in front of a liquor store looking shifty, let's just send him to jail.
No, but if someone cuts a bargain and pleads guilty, they are guilty.
So if you look guilty and we charge you for something unrelated to the actual crime, you must have been guilty of the crime?
But this isn't about you or me judging it. It's Mike Flynn saying, hi, I'm Mike Flynn. I am guilty. We don't know what else.
The FBI jumps in your face and says, we're going to send you away on a perjury charge unless you plead to it. Fine, I get it. And he lied. I'm not defending Flynn. My only point is, if this doesn't bring to the surface evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia, what is the point of this? The point is to hamstring the administration. You can't do that in a democracy. That's bad.
I don't believe that's what it is. If you look at how this started, this in large part started because of the president's refusal to accept the intelligence community's assessment that the Russian government actively tried to undermine our election.
Where's the evidence of that? Where's a single piece of evidence of that?
The intelligence community, the bipartisan, nonpartisan career people have presented that.
The ones that called 9/11 and the collapse of the Soviet Union, the people who've been consistently wrong.
You forgot Iraq.
Iraq. That's the first one, by the way. I'm agreeing with you on that. They provided not a single piece of evidence publicly, and yet we're all supposed to nod in bovine agreement. It must be true because unnamed superiors say it's true.
But that's not a Democrat-Republican thing.
I'm not saying it is.
No, but
I'm just saying it's insane.
But you have Republicans in Congress.
A ton of them, and I disagree with all of them. The ones who just reflexively agree with unnamed
But they've seen the intelligence. They've seen what you and I haven't.
Because they're stopping
We're allowed to have secrets as a nation.
Look, we've shut down the whole government over this. So don't we have a right to know that there's something real there? I haven't seen one thing.
We have a right to know what happened. And I think that's what this process is leading to, and that's why Bob Mueller should be left alone.
Oh, we're leaving him alone. He better, but it better
clearly
be more
he
than
hit a
perjury.
nerve. He hit a nerve, and that nerve is named Mike Flynn.
All right, we'll see. Philippe, thank you.
No, thank you as always, Tucker.
Chicago's government can't keep its citizens safe. People are leaving the city, normal middle-class people, but it can give a lot of benefits to people who shouldn't be here in the first place. Rahm Emanuel's pledged to give IDs to illegal immigrants. Rahm Emanuel's regime in Chicago has a new plan for so-called undocumented immigrants. Give them documents, just like everybody else. For more, we're joined by Fox National correspondent Matt Finn, who's in Chicago for us tonight. Hey, Matt.
Tucker, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel has unveiled his new City ID program. The individual IDs will be called City Keys. The program will give a government ID to anyone living in the city, regardless of their U.S. immigration status. The mayor of Chicago says the IDs are meant to welcome the undocumented community into the city.
If you want somebody who's undocumented to feel comfortable to be able to drive their child to school and all the benefits, they have to be part of the city. This municipal ID, the City Key, will bring all those different communities and more that are on the periphery, on the sideline, into our city. And when we say welcome, we mean welcome.
The city of Chicago says the IDs are meant to be an all-in-one resource for Chicagoans who can link their library and public transit accounts to the card, and there will be discounts at cultural centers and for our veterans and senior citizens. However, critics, including Chicago aldermen, worry Emanuel's program will give IDs to people here illegally, especially since the city of Chicago will not be asking applicants about their U.S. immigration status. Applicants only have to prove they live in Chicago and must pass a 4-point ID system, and applicants are able to pick their gender on the IDs. The first 100,000 IDs will be free, and the city of Chicago insists the program will be secure enough to weed out fraudulent applicants. Tucker?
I'm sure it will. Matt Finn from Chicago, thank you. Francisco Hernandez is an immigration attorney from the state of Texas, and he joins us tonight. Francisco, thanks a lot for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
So the city of Chicago is deeply in debt. The middle class is fleeing. Crime has moved not just from the south side, but to the center of the city. It's got the highest parking fees in the country. The city's in a really tough shape. Why would the city, in the middle of the various crises it's facing, take all this time and all this money to serve the needs of people who are here illegally over citizens?
Well, you know, don't be so hard on Chicago. It's pretty stout. But you know what? My friend Lauren Wall told me that the reason Donald Trump won is because he's the only one saying nice things about America. But you know what? We're forgetting that these undocumented illegal immigrants are the only ones that are dying to get to this country. That is the highest compliment. They hang under trains, they swim, they are willing to die to get here to this country and earn the opportunity to be here. Now, once they get here, they want to sign the guest book. That's all they're saying is we get their biometrics, they're the eye optics, they get the sign. We know who they are.
We don't know who they are. We don't know who they are because hold on. We don't know who they are. They don't have American birth certificates. There's no way to check their identification. This is an invitation to fraud. But speaking of fraud, what percentage? What percentage of these people are already working in this country? A high percentage. Everyone who's working in this country.
0% unemployment.
Right. So every person here illegally who's working is doing so with a fake Social Security number, fake federal documents. That's a felony.
You know,
wait, no, what do you mean? Wait, hold on. After 9/11, we realized that using fake federal documents is not a joke, so we made it a felony, punishable by years in prison. Why would you give special privileges to someone who's committing an open felony? I don't understand.
You're not. We're hiring them. We are giving them jobs. They are 100% employed. You and I. When we go to a restaurant, we go to a hotel,
when you get your roof done, to do that?
Let's not be hypocrites. Let's not be hypocrites. We need the labor.
I'm not using.
We need the labor.
No,
and
hold
they
on.
want
I'm not using fake. Wait, slow down. Okay, enough the talking points. This is
You're going to go put up a roof at 110 degrees.
Does it bother you? Look, there are actually Americans who will get outside and work. I hire them.
Not you and I.
Yeah, not you and I. But there are people who will. And the point I'm asking you is unrelated to that, and it's a really simple one. Why would you want to reward people who are committing fraud with federal documents, committing a felony? I don't understand.
It's a legally issued ID that they're offering, and they're trying to tell you who they are, and they're trying to tell you that they're willing to earn the opportunity to be in this country. They're not even asking for government benefits. I mean, come on.
Every single one of them receives government benefits. Every single one. And apparently
that's a lie.
It's certainly not a lie. Do their children go to school here? Do they get health care in the emergency room? Do they use the roads? Do some of them get do some of them get tax benefits for children? Yes, all of them. So look, the point is, I'm just trying to correct.
You've got a big heart.
Yeah, I do, because I care about the Americans, for example, in the city of Chicago, who don't have jobs.
They're giving us.
Yeah.
They love America. They're
Right.
America
So let me
first.
just ask
They're
you.
wanting to make America great again.
Then why wouldn't they obey our laws if they love America
They're trying
so much?
to. Give
Really?
them a
Then why don't
chance.
they leave and apply normally like everybody else?
Because you can't.
Through the legal system.
Because you can't. It is impossible.
Why
It does
can't
not
you?
exist. Because it doesn't exist under law. That's why you and I
We bring
agree
in over
on
a million
immigration
people
reform.
every. Do you know anything? I thought you were an immigration attorney. We bring in over a million people legally every single
I'm pretty
year.
good at it.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at it.
Then when you say there's no way for them to do it, how do the million-odd other people come here legally?
Well, it's not a million. We give diversity visas to countries that help
It's
us in the
over
war.
a
There's
million
nothing
people.
wrong with that. Okay, but they're not up there putting our roofs. Guys, they're wanting to sign your guest book. They're willing to come out of the shadows and say, this is who I am.
Francisco, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Well, it's not just Airbnb. Up next, we'll discuss the family which found a hidden camera in the cabin of their cruise ship. You were spooked by a recent segment about hidden cameras in Airbnb bedrooms. Maybe you canceled your trip to Charleston or Chattanooga and decided instead to go on a nice, relaxing cruise away from prying cameras. Oh, but you can't get away. A family traveling on a Carnival cruise in the Gulf of Mexico say they found a hidden camera in their cabin. Carnival Cruise Line says the camera was non-operational and they notified police. The family says they haven't received an apology even. Jimmy Messis is an expert on sweeping for electronic bugs. Vinu Varghese is an attorney and expert in surveillance crimes. They join us both tonight. Vinu, first to you. What is this? They say it was non-operational. What does that mean exactly?
Well, what they're saying is that the camera technically wasn't transmitting a signal. Unfortunately, they contradict themselves because they said the camera was warm to the touch. So it must have been on.
Huh. So, Vinu, does the family have a reason to be upset about this?
Absolutely. I mean, here, the issue you've got here is that you can forget Pirates of the Caribbean. You've got perverts of the Caribbean. You've got potential child pornography and video voyeurism going on right on a Carnival cruise ship. And the cruise ship has a duty to protect its passengers. They have actual liability because they're a common carrier. The other issue is that this brings us to the next point, which is that the crime scene was completely mishandled by the employee. If you saw the video taken by the father even says, should you not put on gloves? So it's the exact opposite. It's like bizarro CSI. It's the exact opposite of what should have happened.
Huh. So Jimmy, what do these look like?
Well, I mean, this is a small camera I have in my hand, and this is large. Most of the cameras are pinhole. You'll never see them. You'll never find them. They can be concealed inside an everyday object, like an electrical outlet, coffee maker, within cables, an outlet, an AC charger. Unless you have the right equipment, you'll never know that you're being watched by a hidden camera.
So what are the rules? I mean, there are cameras all over public places, on the sidewalk, inside buildings, inside hotel lobbies. Are there ever legitimate cameras inside living spaces on cruise liners or in hotels?
No, it's just that's why you have a crime going on here.
Okay, so never. So if you find a camera where you're sleeping, it shouldn't be there.
Correct, or the FBI is looking at you, or something like this is happening where there's video voyeurism going on at the very least.
And,
or you
Tucker,
live in
there's
Washington.
an epidemic. Yeah. There's an actual epidemic of hidden cameras being placed in many different places because they're so inexpensive to find. You can buy them on eBay or Amazon for as little as $30 or $40, and you can place them anywhere you want. Now, the camera that they did find in the one room had to have a little transmitter, which meant that it would have only transmitted within the ship area, someplace local. The recorder must have been within the next room or within a couple other rooms. It couldn't have been much farther away.
Well, so it couldn't be so hard to find it then, could it?
Well, it is kind of hard to find because some of them are so small. You only need to expose the pinhole area of the lens, and I can hide that in a hole as small as a buttonhole. So very, very small. You wouldn't be able to find it normally. Most of these people that have been finding the cameras have found them accidentally because the person who put them in there really didn't know what they were doing. This is actually a large camera. They make them much smaller.
So what's your defense against this?
You have to look at power. Power is the main thing. What is the camera connected to? If it's battery operated, more than likely the camera's only going to last a few hours because it has to power the camera and the transmitter. Always check for outlets. Look to see where it's connected to an outlet. Also look at anything that's pointing towards the bed. That's the most important thing.
So, Vinu, how paranoid are you knowing what you know about these things?
I'd be worried. Carnival, as I mentioned, is a common carrier. It's a cruise ship. Has a duty to protect its passengers. Its slogan is fun for all for fun. Well, the fun is not being had by the passengers here. It's being had by some pervert,
Well, in this case, and you'd think it would have to be an employee because without any knowledge of it, it's hard to see who else could do that. Hope we find out. Jimmy, Vinu, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, for a year, the media has pushed the storyline that sinister foreigners hacked our democracy in this country. Reporters are publishing on it every day. A lot of that information is coming to them from official Washington. Are they skeptical enough of it? One man with the answers to that joins us next. Republican leaders in Congress tonight appear to have finished hashing out what they hope is the final version of their massive 1,000-page tax bill. Fox Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has been following it and has details tonight. Hey, Ed.
Tucker, good to see you. This is a big deal for President Trump. His first major legislative victory. A lot of skeptics had said it was not going to get done. One of the biggest pieces of this deal is the fact that the corporate tax will go down from 35% to 21%. Overall, this is a $1.5 trillion tax cut, the biggest in over 30 years. It was sealed, really, by the fact that two reluctant Republicans finally came on board, Marco Rubio and Bob Corker. Rubio in the last couple of days have been pushing very hard to increase the child tax credit for lower and middle income families. And he won a victory there by getting it up to $1,400 per child for this tax credit. Bob Corker had and still has concerns about this impact of this $1.5 trillion on the short-term deficit and the long-term debt for this country. But in the end said he believes this will provide enough economic growth that he's willing to take a chance on it. The standard deduction for families will double to $24,000 for married couples. For individuals, it will double to $12,000 per year. The top individual rate will go from 39.6% down to 37%. Interesting because you have not a single Democrat in the House or Senate saying they will support this. So this is going to be a major midterm election issue as Democrats try to make the case it's not going to trickle down to the middle and lower income classes, and it's going to be a tax cut for the rich. That's been their case all along. For the Republicans, Paul Ryan, other leaders in Congress, Mitch McConnell, this is a big deal in addition for the president repeal and replace Obamacare. Finally, the president tonight has been tweeting about record highs again today for the Dow, NASDAQ, S&P. You can bet once the House moves forward Tuesday on a vote, the Senate expected later next week, you could see a lot more activity in the markets next week. Tucker.
Ed Henry in New York. Thanks, Ed. Well, for more than a year, the press has told us about how Russian collusion destroyed American democracy, but they've had a problem. Actual evidence of collusion does not exist, so instead reporters have been totally reliant upon leaks from within the federal bureaucracy and the intelligence community. Can these leaks be trusted at face value, or could there be other agendas at work? Stephen Cohen's been following this for a long time. He's Professor Emeritus of Russian Studies at NYU. He's also contributing editor at The Nation, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Tucker.
So I'm reading the Washington Post today, which is the Jeff Bezos publication, and right on the front page there's a piece about Russia. And the subhead says here, hacking democracy, as if it is a known and universally accepted fact that our democracy was, quote, hacked. Do we know that?
We do not. It's been alleged. Originally, it was said that 17 intelligence agencies made that finding. Turned out it was a few people and a couple intelligence agencies. If you read on in the Washington Post story in the first paragraph, they go back to this claim that it's the consensus of intelligence agencies. So it's simply not true. I have to say that in addition to being professor, for a long time, I was also a paid consultant of a major American television network. I admire mainstream media. I learned a lot, but I have never seen media malpractice like this before in my life. What that constitutes is essentially making allegations for which there is no verified facts, information, or evidence, and then basing your commentary on it. So, briefly put, it's said that somehow Trump has been compromised by Putin, the leader of Russia. Then when Trump does diplomacy with Putin, the New York Times literally calls it treason. I've never seen anything like this before.
So a lot of what we think we know about this story comes from the intelligence community or from the permanent parts of the U.S. government, career bureaucrats, some of whom are knowledgeable. But they're passing on information to reporters, and reporters appear to be reprinting it uncritically. Do you think that reporters should keep in mind that there are sometimes agendas attached to these leaks?
Well, you know what's well, you just made the valid point. A leaker, by definition, has a political agenda. We'd agree on that, right?
Yes, of course.
You may not be old enough to remember, but I remember when the media, and particularly the liberal media, was deeply suspicious of intelligence agency sources.
Yes, I
now we have
well.
a situation where they seem to be the holy writ. If they whisper it to you on the telephone, it's true, and you print it. But they are as apt to make mistakes. I mean, the same Washington Post story today said something amazing. It said that President Trump has an aversion to this Russiagate intelligence. How nice it would have been if John F. Kennedy had had aversion to the intelligence that led to the Bay of Pigs. How nice it would have been if President Johnson had an aversion to the intelligence that led us ever deeper into Vietnam.
Well,
and nobody
exactly
need recall Bush's reliance on intelligence when we went to war in Iraq. A president who is skeptical about intelligence, critical-minded of it, is a good president.
Is a wise president, for certain. So just to circle around to my first question to make certain I have this absolutely right, do we have, that you have seen, any evidence at all that the Russian government materially affected the outcome of the 2016 election?
I have heard you say repeatedly there is no evidence. I've looked harder than you have. I've looked here in America, but I also have looked in Moscow. I mean, when I'm there, I ask people I know, and yes, I confess, I do know people who are or have been Russian intelligence agents. I haven't found anybody in Moscow who believes this story.
And you are a Russian speaker, so that says a lot. I'm sure you'll be denounced as a tool of Putin for saying so, but we appreciate your analysis of that, Professor. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks, Tucker.
Time now for the Friend Zone. We bring on one of our friends tonight, one of the most popular people in our building, that's for sure. It is Christmas season, so we're happy to have a gift-themed guest tonight. Ainsley Earhart is a host at Fox and Friends, and one of the most popular people in the Fox family. She recently released her second book, Through Your Eyes, My Child's Gift to Me. She joins us tonight. I have had the good fortune of reading this book, Ainsley, and I love it.
Thank you.
How does it, but it seems like a perfect Christmas book. Why do you think it is?
Well, I guess we just need it. I think our country needs something like this. We've been talking about the FBI, we've been talking about Russia, we've been talking about the Harvey Weinstein scandals, and then there's Christmas, and we're shopping, and we're busy and busy and busy, and the parties and the gifts and the ornaments and the lights. And for me, I just don't want people to miss Christmas this year. I want you to focus on the true light, which is Jesus. And, you know, I'm not shy talking about my faith. And this book talks about what I've learned being a mother, what I've learned being a Christian, and that is just to walk through life and soak up every single moment and don't take any of it for granted. And so this book, you can see a mother holding hands with her daughter or with her child, and all the things that we experience with our children. We need to appreciate all of those moments and make memories. And this Christmas, you need to hug your children and spend time with your family and make traditions and give back to other people and remember the true reason for the season. Just don't miss Christmas, because there's so much going on. And I feel like, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and I have more responsibilities, but it is just so busy, and I have to take a pause every now and then and just thank God for the many blessings that I have. And that's what this book is all about.
You know, I live in such a cynical world, but you're one of the most sincere people I've ever met, so I just want to assure our audience that you mean every word of what you just said. The illustrations are great in this book. They're really pretty. Where'd they come from?
So we worked with this illustrator. The illustrator that I used for the first book, same last name, but different person. And so we were a little bummed that the first person wasn't available because she was involved in another book. So we found this illustrator and we started working together, and his work is amazing. It looks like watercolors. That's what everyone tells me. My mother was a school teacher for 33 years, nationally board certified. She is such an amazing person, such a great teacher. And she said, Ainsley, I love this book because when you're a parent, you can teach them not only about what you're reading, but what's going on in the pictures and the scenes and their butterflies and their park scenes and their kids hiding behind the tree. And there's a lot to look at. So I remember reading books, and I remember remember reading Curious George books, and I loved, I could sit on those pages for 10 minutes because I was looking at someone in the apartment window and someone in the park, and there's my little girl. That was the first time she had her hands on that book, and it's dedicated to her, Tucker.
That's fantastic. Does she understand that you wrote it for her?
I don't think she understands that yet. She's only 2. But she does, you know, I'll show her the picture. There's a big picture on the back of the book of me holding her. And some of the proceeds go to Folds of Honor. They give scholarship money, Tucker, to I'm sure you're familiar with this, to kids who have lost their parents fighting for our great country. And so when my dad, I presented a $50,000 check to Dan and just wanted to give back to him. Those are some of the proceeds I made from the first book and the second book. So wanted to cut him a check for that because he blesses so many people. And, you know, my dad's goal, Tucker, was to put himself through school, and he did it. Then his goal was to put the 3 of us through school. And when I presented that check to Dan, he said, you know, your dad's just putting 10 more people through school.
Amen.
So it's really cool how it all
is so nice.
Yeah, it comes together.
As you are. Ainsley Earhart, one of the good
people.
Thank you so
much. It's AinsleyEarhartBooks.com.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Tucker.